which makes perfect sense now. The harmony is what I followed. The pieces of the story is what I caught. So I don't
Mhm.
think I think I was tying the harmony kind of like as a monolith to this cleaning empire.
Mhm.
But let's talk about what the harmony is
Yeah.
and like what that passion represents.
Yeah, so the Harmony is literally so the Harmony is our brand. It was funny because it was our hashtag for our wedding, and we was giving
Mm.
out to friends and family. What's a dope hashtag? Because everybody had this was when Snapchat was coming around. It was like, all right, everybody's doing hashtags and locations now. It's like, oh, I'm older, but whatever. We couldn't think of anything, and I literally took Harmony from last name. Our last name is Hartzog, and Harmony from matrimony. So I said the Harmony is our wedding hashtag, and it's funny because it was so dope. We started our Instagram page just from sharing our journey, just being in Dallas as newlyweds, going through this financial in our first year, trying to figure out life. And it's become this brand that we didn't even think about, 7 years ago, where now we're talking about financial literacy. Now we're sharing our businesses. They know our daughter. So the Harmony was literally just a hashtag for our wedding, but now it's literally pretty much our holding company's name,
Mm.
Harmony, and we didn't know that would be that today. So the
Yes.
cleaning business was just one of the businesses from quote unquote the Harmony, which is me and my wife. And then we have our virtual assistant business, and then we have real estate, and we have other structures. But literally, the Harmony was literally just a hashtag that we said it sounds good on paper, and it looked good as a hashtag on Instagram back then.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Want to start to kind of round out the conversation and refocusing on what wealth means. We talked about the time component, but
Mhm.
as you're considering your family as you do moment by moment, day by day, from a longer term perspective, how does what does wealth mean to you and your family?
Yeah. So when going back to the question about entrepreneurship and when we had our daughter, before we had our daughter, my wife's grandfather gave her $1,000, and he's like, I don't know if I'm gonna be here. This is a couple years ago, probably like 5 years ago. He said, "But I don't know if I'm gonna be here. Is I don't know when you guys are planning on having kids, but he said if I am here, I would like you guys to do something with this $1,000 for our daughter that wasn't born yet."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, let's put it to debt." I was like, "Let's just throw it to debt." My wife was like, "No, because you throw it to debt, it will have no symbolic meaning to it."
Yeah.
So we took that $1,000, and what we did was we opened up our pretty much our daughter's savings account. And we said before our daughter was born, we said we will put money into this account every single month until she's born. And then when she's born, we're gonna invest it into a Roth IRA for her. Now, she's a component of our business. She's on
Yeah.
the media and branding and all of that, like
Push the
other cool
12K
stuff.
tour.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all of that
yeah,
other
yeah,
cool
yeah.
stuff that people talk about on Instagram. But that was the first understanding of what this means beyond us. And
Yeah.
we weren't thinking about it then. It was just him saying, "Hey, whenever you guys have a kid, he's like, you do this with whatever you want." But he's like, if you have a kid, do something with this money. He's still around to this day, and we got pictures. He just turned 90, literally. Both her grandparents are 90, just turned 90 this year. She's been able to take pictures with him, and we always tell him that story, like that $1,000 you gave us. Now we've been so a few going back to your original question. I don't want to get too far off topic because this all to me
Yeah.
is what this long term wealth strategy is for us. But thinking beyond just us today, right? So having a foundation for our daughter, literally going back to our church, our tithing, that's in our daughter's name. So now we invest the tithes from our personal finances to our churches from our daughter's name. Having her on the businesses, she's on our trust, she's on our estate. Now we're at the point where we're recognizing that we haven't had pretty much an estate meeting with our family. So my wife's mom is on our estate planning, and also in our trust, and as well as her cousin. So now we're at the point where we need to sit down and start talking about these things. All right, we got a couple properties, we got a couple businesses. So this is now it's becoming more serious to us
Yeah.
because you could pass away today and have nothing. So life insurance, we have a life insurance policy on her. We have life insurance on me, my wife as well. So having these conversations beyond us. Growing up, I talk to my mother now all the time. Like, you don't have life insurance. What happens when you pass? It's gonna fall on me. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I'm gonna have to come out my family's pocket to pay for God. My mother's still here.
Right.
She is healthy. God forbid. But I'm having a very intentional, serious conversation. You don't understand how this impacts me and my family at this point by you not having life insurance. Now, it's not about me taking the money. I don't care about the money, but I want you to be able to cover yourself because now I got to grieve. My wife has to deal with my grief, and then now we got to come out our family's pocket to
Right.
deal with the
Mhm.
planning, because Black people, we don't talk about this shit. Like, excuse me, we don't talk about this
Yeah,
stuff.
no,
And
spot on.
I get real passionate when we have these conversations, because I'm currently having this conversation with my family. My wife's mom, we had a conversation where what happens when you pass? Who has access to your life insurance? Who has access to your bank accounts? Who has access to everything that you have?
Mhm.
Because her actual father gave her that conversation, but they've been too afraid. Our Black, families have been too afraid to discuss
Mhm.
what happens when I die. One of the first things me and my wife did, we had Alani, what happens when we die? One of the first things we did. So going back to wealth and the wealth building topic, those are conversations we're having now to figure out what happens when we die. What does this look like? She's not gonna want to own a cleaning business. I know for a fact. I know for a fact she's not going to own a cleaning business, but she's going to want to partake in what the cleaning business has given us. So whether that's a sell, what does selling this business look like? It's not attached to our brand, not attached to our likeness. We want to sell it. We have an operations manager. We got a team in place. That's good to go. So those are things that we're currently having intentional conversations about. What does it look like after we're not here?
Yeah, and I don't want to rush that part of the conversation at all, because I am coming to the realization, as seeing my parents lose their mothers. I never met a grandfather, but seeing my dad lose his mom and then my mom lose her mom within the span of 2.5 years, it started to hit me that the expectation of me may be what the expectation of them was, right? And there wasn't a lot of financial education, so it was the generation, the living generation taking care of the passing generation, when it's supposed to be kind of reversed,
Other
at
way
least in
around.
terms of giving the starting point. So, how did you and your wife approach those conversations? Because, and I'm asking this selfishly because these are conversations we need to have, that quite honestly, I've been embarrassed to have, because I haven't structured my life the way that I see it in my head. Right. And I think I'm trying to chase this point where I got to figure it out. Now let's sit everybody down, but that's not how life works.
No.
So having these intentional conversations, what was it like for you and your wife to get on the same page? Was it fairly easy? Was it, and I'm not trying to dig into your
No,
business,
you're
but
good,
just
man.
perspective selfishly, but I think it also helped.
And the purpose of your question, I understand that, and it's going to be different for everyone, but I think we should be having these conversations a lot more. And for us, I would say it wasn't the easiest conversation to sit down and talk to my wife about her mother when my mother's not doing it, right? So but she sees me intentionally having the conversation with my mother, because I can't have the conversation. Well, now we have the conversation with her mother, but it took me sitting in my seat saying, "Hey, mom, you have to have life insurance. Why? Because when you die, it's going to impact my family."
Right.
And not from a selfish way, but I have to deal, again, going back to the grief, I have to deal with that, and then also have to deal with the finances of that. So it took me, like you mentioned, having your ducks in a row. It took me intentionally having those conversations before I could go to my wife and say, you need to have these conversations with your mother, because it's going to happen. And in our communities, we feel like we are never going to die.
Yeah.
We are never going to die.
Yeah.
Lord, RIP to my cousin's baby's father, but he was killed, and he had 2 kids, and she's a single mom. And I was like, damn. And I asked my wife, I was like, you think they got life insurance? And she was like, Tony, they don't. And I was like, I said, why? She's like, I said, why would you think that I would know that? She's like, we don't, just know we don't talk about that stuff. Then the question always becomes, why don't we talk about it? So going back to your original question, it wasn't the easiest to have the conversation about death. And I don't think anyone wants to sit here and talk about death. But it does happen, right? People die every single day. The stats show it. Only thing guaranteed in life is taxes and dying. So we know that. So we know we're going to die one day. What does it look like after you die? And I was literally listening to a podcast, and I forgot what the young lady's name was. And she said, if you had to watch a movie about how your death played out, what would that movie look like? Like, she's like, vividly picture after you die, what would that movie look like? There has to be a funeral. There's going to be expenses. There's going to be grief. There's going to be mourning. What does that look like in terms of you're no longer here, you're just sitting and watching? Would you be happy with the movie? Would you be sad? Would you be upset? And literally after we listened to that podcast, and I told my wife, like, yo, we got to have this sit down family meeting, because yes, we got our ducks in a row, But our family doesn't know that we have our ducks in a row. It's like we got your name down, we having a conversation, but they don't physically know
Gotcha.
what needs to be done. So it's not an easy conversation, but it's a conversation that we need to have. And your perspective, you know, you're not gonna have it all together. My wife,
Yeah.
my mom, I don't know, I still don't know if she has life insurance or not. Like, but I'm still having an ongoing conversation. Now I'm talking to my brothers about what happens if mom dies. What happens when with her apartment? Who stays there? Who pays the rent? Like, do we all chip in and pay the rent so that somebody we can keep it in the family, or do we sell it? It's going to happen.
It's going to
We
happen.
know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think we just have to be intentional. And especially in our community, we have to be forceful with the conversation. It has to keep happening. Because if you don't, we're just going to create the same cycles that we've been living through.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that's real.
Man, the time has been well spent. Aunt, you said I can call you Aunt, right?
Yeah, you're good,
Cool,
man.
yeah, we in
We
there.
friends now. We good.
We in there. No, seriously, man, I appreciate your conversation. I appreciate your transparency. For people that are looking to find you, connect with you and your wife, how can they do so?
Yeah, so they can check us out at the Hartrimony. So TheHartrimony on all platforms. You could Google us. And yeah, just connect with us there.
Cool. All that information will be available below, no matter how you send this, whether it's a clip or the long form, it'll all be there. We appreciate your time and interest in this conversation. Any closing remarks?
No, man, I enjoyed the conversation. You know, I felt like when we got in the last part, I was like, man, this can be like a whole episode because, you know, wealth management and estate planning is,
Yeah.
yeah, you said it all.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yep. That'll do it. We appreciate you guys. God bless you. Peace.